So you spoke recently, on the story of Joseph, who went through some very hard times, got sold by his brothers into slavery. A lot of things went down, and the end of the story is basically he becomes the Pharaoh's right hand in Egypt.
Love that story.
His brothers come in a time of great need and famine, and instead of being stingy and vengeful and bitter, he shares everything he has with the very people that hurt him.
Yeah, really cool forgiveness story, really cool maturity.
Yes, we love the story of Joseph. Check it out if you've never read it. But what you tied it to was the idea of the gospel, of the good news that we as modern day Christians are meant to share the hope we've found in Jesus with anyone and everyone we come across. And yet, I think we've failed to do it often.
Yeah.
What do you think gets in the way of that?
Man, I think there's so many things, but you're totally right. We know that we're supposed to. So if a pastor or somebody says like, hey, share your faith, we're like, yeah, I'm supposed to. But we don't share it. And I think we forget that it's called the good news for a reason. Yes, the gospel of Jesus is the story of Jesus, but it's not a homework assignment. It's not a heavy thing. God gives us this beautiful picture in 2 Kings chapter 7. This Aramean army surrounds the city of Samaria, and they besiege it. And back then, when you would put a city under siege, you just choked off every avenue of things flowing in or out of the city. Yeah. So their supplies are cut off. They start eating what they have in their cabinets, but they can't get out to their fields. They can't get any other food. It says they start eating every animal. They eat anything and everything they can. They're starving to death. Well, these lepers that are outcasts of the city, they're stuck at the gate. So they can't really get into the city, but they're also surrounded by the army. And they decide, they're like, hey, let's just go out and surrender to the Arameans. Maybe they chop our heads off and they put us out of our misery, or maybe they're kind enough to feed us. But either way, it's got to be better than just slowly starving to death, sitting at the gate, at the edge of the city. So they go out, and the Bible says that God caused the Arameans to scatter. They heard a noise, they got afraid, they run for their lives, meaning they leave all of their stuff in their tents. They leave their gold, their silver, they leave all their food. And these 4 lepers just start cleaning house. I mean, can you imagine that? Yes, yeah. Right? As a kid, I heard this story and I was like, how cool would that have been? You just go in from one to
loot a city.
Oh, they do. They just, yes, clean house. And it says that they eat and they drink all that they can take. And then they take clothes and they take gold and silver and they go out and they bury it, you know? And then finally, one of them says this. He goes, guys, this isn't right. And I always found that really interesting. And if you're watching this, you can go read it for yourself in 2 Kings 7. But he goes, this isn't right. We need to share the good news while we can. Because if we wait till morning, so this is happening that evening. They've been eating and drinking and burying all the children, keeping it all for themselves. And he goes, if we don't go tonight and tell somebody in the city that there's salvation out here, that they can be rescued, then it'll be too late come the morning, like something bad's going to happen. And so they go and they do this. And so I would ask you, Katie, and anybody listening, what is it that motivates those 4 guys who have been outcast from the city? Nobody in the city likes them. They've been starving to death. Now they've got food and everything they could ever want. What is it that motivates somebody to go back, even to people they dislike, like Joseph with his brothers? What motivates them to go back and share this good news, this great thing that they've been given, this salvation that they found?
Yeah, I see actually in that story a couple layers that I think are the exact things that maybe get in the way of us doing it today. But one is, regardless of their specific feelings about the people that they were going to share the good news with, they had enough character and they saw the bigger picture enough to know that this is so much bigger than my individual relationship with anyone. This is salvation. This is food and water, the necessities of life. This is not the kind of thing I can keep to myself and still like myself as a person.
Do you think people not sharing is actually a lack of maturity then?
Yeah, and maybe in forgetting that just because the spiritual aspect of life is unseen, it is the most necessary. It's the only thing that's eternal. But because it's not as in our face as food and water, I think it's easier to forget that this is actually essential, good news that everybody needs to hear.
Yeah.
And then the second part of that I noticed in you retelling it was the urgency that they had of like, we got to tell people tonight because this opportunity might not be here in the morning.
Right. Right. You never know when you're going to get one more chance to talk to that coworker.
Yes.
Or that family member. You don't know when your last chance is to tell them that they can find somebody. That's right. You know, the thing that got me, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll make this quick. The thing that got me was, in both of those cases, if I was Joseph or if I was those lepers, I would say the other people don't deserve it. My brothers don't deserve to be rescued. Those jerks inside of the city who have kicked us out because we have leprosy, they don't deserve salvation. Well, that's so immature, because here's the truth. Nobody deserves it.
Right.
Joseph didn't deserve it. Those lepers didn't deserve it. And when we're talking about our eternal salvation on a spiritual level, we don't deserve heaven.
Yeah. You and I do not.
So to gatekeep it from somebody else because we don't think they're good enough, or even if, somebody told me this recently, I said no for my neighbor. I just assumed my neighbor would say no.
Didn't want to hear it. Yep.
Yeah, that's such a bad thing. I think Satan whispers in our head, like, oh, they're going to reject you, so don't even give it. Well, don't say no for them. Give them the opportunity to decide if they do or don't want heaven. Don't just assume that they won't take it. It's our job to tell them. That's between them and God how they respond. But we don't want to be guilty of being the people who kept it, who hogged it,
right,
and never shared the good news.
Yeah, and ultimately it's a hard pill to swallow, but that's putting my fears above their salvation.
Yeah.
Like, man, at the end of the day, that's
selfish.
not who I want to be.
Yeah.
It's who I am sometimes, but it's not who I want to be.
Oh, that's so true. Like, I don't want to stand before God and have him be like, why didn't you ever tell this person? And me be like, well,
it was going to be awkward.
Yeah, it was awkward. I just thought, how sad that will be, that there's so many people that we could have told them about Jesus, and we could have told them about the salvation right outside their door that they never knew about because we hogged it. We had it, we got it, but we didn't share it.
Yeah.
Man, I hope that that's a good word for somebody watching, that they take us up on telling somebody, neighbor, family member, friend, somebody.
Yeah, God will give you that opportunity if you ask for it.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. Thanks for listening.